There was a story that Charles wanted Harry to stay with him when he comes to the UK later this year. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to say I'm ever so slightly wary of this story, simply because the people I speak to tell me that, yes, the Prince of Wales does really love his son, and yes, there is a dialogue going on there between them. And of course, the hope is that one day they will be able to repair their relationship. But the royal family are just not kind of prone to these grand gestures. That said, I think probably they do want Harry to eventually be able to come to the UK and spend some quality time with his father. But of course, it all depends, I think, slightly on how things go over the next few weeks regarding the judicial review he's seeking from the Home Office about his security. And of course, there is that kind of lurking bombshell of his memoir that's due to come out later this year.
Yes, well, the article did go on to suggest that Charles perhaps wants to keep Harry close precisely because of that autobiography and what he fears might be coming out in it. Do you think that's got any credibility?
I suspect that ship's already sailed. I mean, if the book's coming out in the autumn, I suspect they're on the kind of final draft style phase of this. But of course, I mean, the better his relationship with his father is, I suspect, the less likely he will be to want to stick the boot in. Who knows?
Do you think that Harry would be skipping with joy to stay with his dad on this particular trip?
I was explaining to someone about it this week. It's really weird. I know it seems like they live in massively grand houses, but these houses aren't actually terribly private. Charles's home at Highgrove is actually open to the public, and Clara's house is also his office. And Harry has Frogmore House, which is a perfectly good home of his own. So unless they were going up to maybe somewhere like Markle, which is pretty private, I can't see him staying with him for particularly long, even if he does.
Well, let's watch this space. Now, the other big story you wrote about this week, I was fascinated by this, is that Spotify are taking their deal with Meghan and Harry back into their own hands. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it certainly looks that way. So if you cast your mind back to December 2020, when the Sussexes announced this mega bucks deal, and we got that fascinating 33-minute holiday special featuring close friends like Sir Elton John and James Corden, and of course you can forget their son Archie uttering his first words in public. And we were promised there would be a whole series very soon in 2021, and of course now we're in 2022, and we keep on hearing it's coming soon, but nothing. And then it emerges that they are now advertising Spotify through their in-house production people, Gimlet, are advertising for executive producers, which suggests maybe Harry and Meghan haven't got as much control over the content as it might seem, and they're not even in a stage where they're ready to deliver it quite yet even.
Kate, let's start with you. Do you think there's the slightest chance that Harry and Meghan have overpromised on what they can deliver here for Spotify?
Well, we heard, didn't we, about all these kind of mega deals that they'd signed, and there was huge figures being bandied around, $100 million and things like that. And yet, we've had one episode of the podcast, that's it.
Well, you can't rush brilliance.
Yeah, we thought we might hear something about it by now. Perhaps it's that they haven't delivered what maybe some of the TV execs might have expected. Yes, they're sort of reasonably big names, but they are going to want bang for their buck, as the Americans say, and if that's not being delivered, they're going to start looking at the letter of the contract.
I just think if I was as rolling in cash and living in a mansion as Harry and Meghan were, I would find it very hard to be motivated to do any work. Do you think that that's what's going on here?
There's a mortgage, isn't there, on that property? So I expect they do need to work. And with the row going on about his security over here, he's asking the British government to provide Scotland Yard security when he comes over here, and just draws attention to the huge security bill they pay over there. So they've got this massive mansion, but it's not all paid for. Their lifestyle's very expensive, and if they want to carry on acting like super celebrities, they're going to have to start bringing the money in.
To pump out some content. Now, Richard, you wrote a story that suggested this week that it might not just be Spotify taking things into their own hands.
Well, I think in the same way as Spotify were running these adverts for staff, we've also seen that with Netflix, where they were appealing for production staff for the programmes which have been promised. The first one is due to be called Pearl. I think it's an animated programme about a 12-year-old girl's adventures that's inspired by Meghan from,
very woke adventures,
from what we hear.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same sort of thing. I mean, look, I do, wonder if they've kind of, underestimated how much effort goes into these programmes. Look, just from doing this programme, we know how much effort there is from a big team to put it together. Well, remember in the Oprah interview, Harry sort of just said, oh yeah, we were short of money, so I thought we'd better, do a deal with Netflix or something like that. And it didn't seem to be any kind of enthusiasm or commitment.
Yeah.
But Spotify and Netflix, they want big stuff. They will want a podcast. They won't just want Harry and Meghan, whittering about their chickens or something. They will want big name guests, the Obamas on, discussing big things, really sort of showpiece for Spotify. And so I suspect that's why they're having to take things into their own hands.
Maybe the chickens should have a podcast. That'd be all right, wouldn't it? But Kate, do you think they have to tread carefully if they're going to sort of maintain and preserve their popularity, as well as pump out compelling content?
Well, this is their dilemma, isn't it, really? That what do we want to hear from Harry and Meghan? Well, their details of what it's like inside the royal family. That's their selling point. And yet, how much do they give away about that? They've got this huge book coming out. He's got his big book coming out this year. It's going to be very embarrassing, perhaps, for the royal family. But it's a kind of a one trick, that's all. And they might want to talk about their various campaigns and things like that. But the people paying for this information, the Netflix and the Spotify of the world, Apple Plus, what they really want is information about the palace, is information about the royal family. So how much they give in dribs and drabs. And they need to be censored about that, I suppose.
Well, it's one or the other, isn't it? It's either you get the big names onto your programmes or you reveal details about the royal family. They won't just want a very bland programme.
And what about this other story? But we've heard Rebecca's thoughts, Richard, on Charles offering Harry somewhere to stay. But whatever the fact and fiction of that is, it's clear that the pressure is on Harry to make a return visit to the UK.
Well, I think the pressure would come from himself as well. I mean, as Kate says, they need to keep up that royal link, and that's what gives them the attraction and appeal in America, I think. So, they want, I'm sure Harry and maybe Meghan less so, but they do want to come back to Britain. And I mentioned last week about the christening, Lilibet's christening. They want a royal christening for her. And that's the sort of thing that keeps that royal brand up. But yeah, what's the practicalities? Where would they stay? What protection will they get? It's just become so complicated, hasn't it? Such a headache any time. And the last thing the Queen wants in this, what's meant to be a joyful year, is headaches worrying about these difficult guests.
There's not much joy yet, is there? Oh dear, oh dear. Now, Kate, there's also the issue of the book, Harry's biography. That's going to be another thing that needs content that really meets a deadline. Has this book been written? What's the deal?
Yeah, so he's got this kind of super duper ghost writer.
Oh, yes.
And it's coming out this year. As Rebecca said, it does really feel like, at least they're on the final draft, they must be kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's at this stage, and I expect the lawyers are having a look over it. There have been reports that the palace want to see it before it's published, but I can't imagine any US publisher wanting to show them it beforehand. But it's just such terrible timing, isn't it? You've got the Jubilee. It should be a year of celebration for the Queen. 70 years on the throne, such an incredible feat, an amazing reign. And then you've got Harry, who's going to bring out his book, and we can only assume it's a sort of woe is me.
Will there be any obligation that anybody can impose on showing the book to the royal family?
Look, the big political story in Britain at the moment is this big report about what's been going on in Downing Street in terms of parties.
A lot, by the sound of it.
And they're showing that to the Prime Minister to sort of give him a chance to respond, I guess, or to at least, out of courtesy, to show. I mean, surely our monarch deserves the same courtesy from her grandson.
That's all we have time for on our YouTube version of the show. For more royal news, views and videos, head over to Mail Plus. The link is on your screen now. See you there.